When engaging in rideshare, whether driving for Uber or Lyft on an internet-based digital platform, you will occasionally encounter scam artists. But perhaps sometimes the biggest scam artists you encounter may be the rideshare company themselves. What up, folks? Once again, it is indeed your boy Tim with another ride sharing video. Now, we've been talking about Minneapolis for months. Minneapolis has been fighting the good fight, often with disappointing and distressing results for rideshare drivers, in particular wages and earnings. That has been the biggest issue in Minneapolis. They've won a lot of fights, but they continue to lose the war. They're currently winning a battle, and they're on the cusp of winning the entire war. But we have to talk about scam artists from a rideshare company perspective, because Lyft is in the news for all the wrong reasons. And notice I said Lyft, I didn't say Uber. Now listen to the title of this article. This should tell you every damn thing you need to know. Lyft says it will stop operating in Minneapolis on April 1st if ordinance passes, urges drivers and riders to sign petition. What are they asking drivers to sign? What are they asking passengers to sign? Keep in mind that lack of transparency means most drivers don't know what the hell the passenger is paying for the trip, and the passenger don't know what the hell the rider is receiving. So anytime you get two folks who are in the dark to cooperate in your best interest, you're likely scamming both of them. So understand, as a driver, anything that Lyft is asking you to sign while asking the passenger to sign it simultaneously, it's probably in the best interest of the company. So what is this all about? The rideshare company Lyft says it will be forced to stop operating in Minneapolis on April 1 if a minimum wage ordinance passes. The company sent emails to its drivers and users Monday, urging them to sign a petition in opposition to the rideshare ordinance going through the Minneapolis City Council. Now, we talked about this from several aspects. Number one, I've said it from day one. Strikes, I'm supportive of them, but the best, most successful way to get fair pay, earnings, transparency, and everything else drivers are concerned with is through legislation. Minneapolis is doing just that. Seattle did just that. New York did just that. The strikes have had limited success. When you get the laws changed, you get permanent success. So instead of striking in front of airports and places like that, I've suggested it from day one. Go down to your local city hall where you can get lower ballot politicians to listen to you, where you can have an effect. That's where it's always been successful for drivers. They want a petition signed because they're claiming that if drivers get a minimum wage by law, somehow it will double the price for riders. And we're going to go through that in detail. Why would giving drivers a minimum wage double the price for riders? The price for riding in an Uber or Lyft is not that much cheaper than a taxi. Why would giving drivers a minimum wage cause it to double? Listen to what's being offered, and this should give you a clue that Lyft is actually saying the quiet part out loud, meaning they're ripping drivers off. They're really making you bend over and grab your damn ankles. But listen to the actual numbers. Under the plan, drivers would be paid $1.40 per mile and 51 cents per minute while transporting passengers, and would make no less than $5 per ride. They would also keep 80% of fees for any canceled requests for service. So let's take the numbers that the proposed ordinance is going to give drivers, and let's take into account that Lyft is saying by giving those numbers, the fares are going to double in price. First of all, drivers getting paid a minimum of $1.40 per mile. If going up to $1.40 a mile doubles the fare for passengers, That means if you leave it where it is, the fare should stay where it's at. So if it's doubling, that means drivers are making about 70 cents per mile. If you're going by Lyft's numbers and Lyft's claims, that would mean if the price doubles, that means currently right now, drivers should be making about 70 cents per mile in Minneapolis. That ain't shit. And most passengers would acknowledge paying the driver 70 cents per mile ain't shit. So $1.40 is not unrealistic. Same with the 51 cents per minute. What's half of 51 cents? Remember they said if it goes up to 51 cents, that means the fare should double. So if the fare is doubling, that means the driver's getting twice as much, right? So that means currently the driver's getting around 26 cents. That ain't shit. And most passengers would agree with that. Most passengers would agree that if Lyft is telling the truth, that these ordinance proposals make the fares go up twice as much, then that means currently what they're proposing now, the drivers are making half of that. Otherwise, Lyft has some explaining to do. And last but not least, 80% of the fees is what is in the proposed ordinance. What are they getting now, 40%? I mean, if the fares are going to double, as Lyft is saying, take the proposed numbers and cut them in half. That's what Lyft is telling us. In other words, they're not telling you the truth. It's as simple as that. If drivers get what is being offered here and fares double, that means Lyft has increased their cut in the process. There's no other way around it, because these numbers cut in half paint a dismal picture for what drivers must be currently going through. Last but not least, the ordinance suggests that drivers will get a minimum of $5 per ride. So what is it now, $2.50? Now, we know that actually has some validity to it. There are a host of markets where you can take someone from point A to point B and earn in the $2.50 to $3 range. That does happen. Happens in my market. That absolutely does happen. If you drive a passenger 2 or 3 blocks, you're going to get $2 to $3. That actually does happen. And you may have driven 5-6 miles to come pick that passenger up and take them a few blocks, particularly in the winter when nobody wants to walk at all. So somebody may want to go around the corner to a gas station to pick up some milk, a pack of smokes or something like that. So you go pick them up, take them around the block where they don't want to walk in snow, and then you take them back home. That whole trip may be a half a mile, and you will get paid bullshit rates like we just discussed. $5 minimum in 2024? That's ridiculous that they would suggest that the fares would double. This is what lack of transparency can cause. Nobody knows who's making how much. If the passengers actually knew the truth about what drivers were getting, they would also say what Lyft is saying is bullshit. Last but not least, I'm just going to tell you flat out, for any of my drivers out there, veteran or new, if you sign a petition like this, you're a fucking fool. Period. If you sign a petition like this, knowing it is not in your best interest, you are a fool. Fact is, Lyft is saying what they're proposing is going to hurt Lyft, but Lyft is not making a counteroffer. Okay, if you don't want to pay a minimum of $1.40, what the hell are you offering? Because the shit you're giving right now is making no one happy. No counteroffer is being made. Lyft is wanting to keep things at the status quo, where drivers are in the game for 6 months and out the game because they're going bankrupt. Don't sign this petition, whether you are a driver or a passenger. Fact is, let's say Lyft is telling the truth. The numbers are so bad that they are forced to leave Minneapolis on April 1, some 3 weeks or so in the near future. Let them leave. Let them leave. There's a host of small startups that would fill in that gap. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of passengers in the Minneapolis market that want rides. Uber is not talking about leaving, so Uber would just absorb all of those passengers and pay the $1.40. Fact is, the $1.40 per mile is quite reasonable. I mean, 10 miles. What is $1.40 times 10? If I'm doing my math correct, what is that, 1,400? So you're talking $14 for 10 miles. You're telling me that's overpaying the driver? If he drives you 10 miles, having to get a driver $14 is going to put you out of it? No. Especially when we know that 10-mile trip is probably costing that passenger $30 or more. The reason this doesn't work for Lyft is because their fucking cut is too damn big. That's what the problem is that with the current cut they're receiving and the little peanuts and scraps they're giving drivers, if they're forced to give drivers at least a plate of chicken instead of a plate of peanuts, they can't continue having lobster. They may have to downgrade to steak. That is what's pissing them off. There are plenty of startups that would be happy with steak. Let Lyft do what Lyft needs to do. But if you're in that market, you do what you need to do and scrap that petition. Act as if you've never seen that shit. Have any of you folks received something like that in your market? I understand a hell of a lot of markets are not in the fight like Minneapolis, but have you received something ever from Lyft asking you to sign something where you knew it was not in the best interest of your take home? Let your boy know in the comments. Unfortunately, you don't get the option of saying no. If you don't, you won't be able to drive. But pay attention to this stuff, because every time you sign something like this, you are literally shooting yourself in the foot. It's your boy Tim. Feel free to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.